Let's bring in a veteran of the George W. Bush White House, Ed Lazear. You remember him as Bush's chief economist. Now he's a professor at Stanford University. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Happy to be with you.
We just said Obama willing to cut the rate, looking to tie up some of those, as he characterizes them, loopholes. What would you do differently?
Well, I think cutting the rates would be a good start, but there are actually better ways to do it. The key thing in terms of tax policy is the effective rate. It's not the marginal rate or the nominal marginal rate. What we actually care about is what corporations pay. And most tax economists that have looked at this think that a better way to cut the effective rate is to allow firms to deduct their capital expenditures at the time that those expenditures are made, rather than cutting the rates. In fact, we did a study when I was at the White House, and we estimated that the effect on growth and GDP would be about 4 to 5 times as high if we allowed firms to expense their investment rather than cutting the rates on the margin.
So looking at like research, R&D tax credits, things of that sort just aren't enough for you at this point?
Right. Well, there's nothing wrong with the R&D tax credit, but the point is it should be much more general. So all investment should be deductible. So, you know, in some sense, this is kind of putting the thing backwards. Rather than saying, look, we're gonna close the loopholes, which I think aren't really loopholes. These are just incentives that are associated with particular kinds of investments. What we should be doing is making those neutral across all investments and allowing firms to make the appropriate decision consistent with their businesses.
So, you know, it seems it's oversimplifying things to say it's an either-or situation. Either you hike on the individual or you hike on the corporate. But looking at both two possibilities here, President Obama says he still wants to look at raising individual tax rates. So which one's more or less harmful for growth?
Well, you know, you have a trade-off here, because obviously we want the system to be progressive, but there are ways to make the system, continue to make the system progressive and still have an efficient tax system for the business sector. So I believe that what we should be focusing on primarily is the business sector. And the reason for that is that capital is mobile. You know, what we care about is increasing productivity so that workers' wages go up. That's the key thing. If you look at the historical record, what we know is that over and it's not even that long a run, over about a period of 5 years or so, there's a one-for-one movement between productivity and wages. You get a 1% increase in productivity, you get a 1% increase in wages. So the way to get increases in productivity is by making investment attractive to firms and having them raise productivity through their investment activity. Now, the big problem is that capital is easily mobile across international borders. So we have to make our investment environment attractive for capital, both to stay here and to come here. And if we don't do that by lowering the effective tax rate, we're going to have trouble in the long run.
But isn't the challenge to these assumptions that a company would make decisions to invest purely because of tax incentive versus actual demand? I mean, we've had CEOs who say, that's nice, thanks for, you know, the credit, but I'm not going to go out and increase inventory if I can't assume that consumers are going to buy or that the spending is going to be beyond just, you know, a quarter.
Surely correct. Absolutely. There's no question that the demand side is the issue, but the issue here is what firms care about is after-tax returns, and after-tax returns depend on two things. First of all, they depend on the amount of demand, as you just mentioned, but they also depend on how much of the revenues you take away from the company in the form of taxes. So both of those components are going to be important. It's certainly true that if a firm doesn't have demand, just because you cut taxes, they're not going to be investing. But if they do have demand, they're going to be investing a lot more if they find that their tax rate on their returns is lower. You know, if you tax those profits away, that's going to be an impediment to investment activity.
You know, one big criticism of this Obama budget is that Social Security is not addressed at all. Social Security was attempted to be addressed during the Bush years. Looking back, are you glad that it wasn't privatized, that Social Security wasn't privatized?
No, I'm not glad. I think that the president President Bush had a good plan for personal accounts and Social Security. We could have gone much further in terms of looking at entitlements. I wish we had, and I hope that President Obama will, because if you look into the future, I just listened to the clip from President Obama yesterday, and the problem is that no matter how much we raise taxes, we cannot solve our long-run fiscal problem by raising taxes.
Right.
It's just not going to happen. You know what those numbers look like, and so we're going to have to address things on the revenue side. So it's fine to say, well, we have to look at taxes as well, but we just can't get there by looking at taxes. We've got to do most of the cutting on the revenue side.
Yeah. The entitlements are going to have to be scrutinized. I hear you. Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you.